My parents were immigrants that came over from Ukraine, from Odessa in 1979. And
Hmm.
my dad had a 2 year technical degree in machining. So when he came to the United States, he got a job as a machinist. Over time, he two of his foremen had left the business that he was working at, and they bought one machine, one small warehouse. They called him after about a year or so after they left and said, "Hey, we were always really impressed with your work ethic, and we have this company we started. There's one machine, there's two of us, but we realize that if this machine isn't running 24 hours a day, we're never going to make money.
Hmm.
So we will lend you 1/3 equity in exchange for working in the graveyard shift for no pay until the business begins to make some money."
Whoa.
Wow.
So that's how my dad got started, because he came over as an immigrant, leaving Russia. Or Soviet Union. It was a really tragic trip over. He buried his father in Rome on the journey over from Russia, coming to the United States. So he arrived here. I think he was 24 years old. My mom was 22, with an elderly mother, with a father he had recently lost, and with a 2 year, technical degree. So the whole concept of being a business owner was foreign to him, just because that didn't exist. In Soviet Union, you were assigned a job and you were assigned an apartment, and there wasn't a lot of freedom of choice. Once he got to understand what they were offering him, he took the chance. So for about 2 years, he would go to work at 11 p.m. He would work until about 6:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Then he would go to the other job that paid, work there from 7 to 3:30, and then in between would take a break and sleep. And I was already a baby then, and see me. And this went on for a couple of years. The second business ended up beginning to grow and make enough money to draw a salary. So he quit his first job and really focused on this company. It was called Seeger Engineering. And after a few years, he bought out one of the partners. And after a few more years, he bought out another one of the partners. And when he sold the business, there were almost 700 employees there.
Oh my God. That is an impressive story. That's an impressive person.
Very much so. And so I often joke that growing up, the only language spoken in our house was unconstructive criticism, because it often felt like the weight of the Jewish people, of my parents, was on our shoulders. It was just, why are you not doing better? Why are you not the best? Why don't you have all A's? We didn't come to America so that you could be a B student. All we talked about at the dinner table was work all the time. He didn't really care about my sports, or if I had a friend, he never asked about Johnny. Like, it was just, my job was to get A's, his job was to provide. And it was a pretty clear, pragmatic upbringing in that way. So it often felt like a good amount of pressure to perform. At the dinner table, the only conversations, not only, but most of them, were about inventory turns and clients that he was trying to win or keep, or clients that were unhappy with him, or bank terms, or real estate terms for office leases, or opening up new offices in other places, people he had to hire, people he had to fire, the economy, the impact he had.
Really exciting stuff for a kid to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the day that he hit 12 inventory turns in a year, and he was pretty pumped. And so, I didn't really realize it at the time, but it was obviously, an amazing school for me, or classes don't really teach a lot of that. Most of what you learn in college is a lot of theory, whereas I felt like I was living it from the operator on a daily basis. And so growing up, I worked every summer in that business. And over time, what started as a machine shop began to grow, and my dad ended up going upstream. And so eventually he became a tier 1 integrator for the semiconductor and biomedical capital equipment industries, what's known as a contract manufacturer. And so similar how Foxconn makes the iPhone for Apple,
Mm-hmm.
Intuitive Surgical, which makes a robot that does open heart surgery, or Applied Materials, which makes capital equipment that companies like NVIDIA use to make chips. They would make the designs, and then my dad's company would leverage the machine shop. Then they would buy, motors, cables, casters, lasers, whatever the components were, assemble it all in a clean room, and then ship it to their customer's customer. So in Intuitive Surgical's case, they would ship it to the hospitals or operating rooms on behalf of Intuitive Surgical, but Intuitive Surgical focused on the design. And so this ended up becoming pretty analogous to the work that I eventually got into. If you were to think of machine shop as carpenters and think of components as subcontractors, and then the clean room as the construction site, and the customers as a architect or as a homeowner, and the finished product was delivered to somebody else who got to use it or enjoy it. So growing up, all we talked about was work, and every summer all I did was work at the machine shop. And I did everything. I swept the floors, I collected the metal shavings for the recycler, I ran CNC machines, I worked in the quality control department with mechanical drawings and calipers and checking for defective units. And eventually after college, I started working in the supply chain management department. In the supply chain management department, my job was to find and develop suppliers in low-cost regions that we could sub out our least complicated components to, because our manufacturing was headquartered in South San Francisco, and we had a satellite location in Sacramento. We eventually opened it up an office in China. And in order to stay competitive, we would just keep subbing out the least complicated components so that our guys here in America would focus on the most complicated components. So I literally traveled to Lithuania, to Shenzhen, to Guangzhou, and had to find and develop suppliers, negotiate contracts with them, inspect and understand their capabilities, manage their deliveries, all of that. And I hated it. It was like Office Space. It was a giant warehouse. It was maybe 100,000 square feet. It was cube land. It was, 200 cubicles, all in this, big flat industrial space in South San Francisco, not next to anything. So my friends who were all working in finance or whatever, they would go to the bars after work, and I was having $1 hot dog at Costco because that was the closest restaurant. And a lot of the people there were, this wasn't a sexy or hyper interesting business. And so while like my manager was a Berkeley MBA, who was an Annapolis grad, the bulk of the people working in the company were not that kind of a person. The bulk of the people working in the company were, 9-to-5ers, pretty basic, punch in, punch out, doing the minimum so they could get home to their cats. Not to hate on any of the cat lovers, but just kind of describing the kind of person.
Yeah, not home to the kids, home to the cats.
Yes. And so I just didn't love the industry. I didn't love the work, but I was good at it because that's still, I've done nothing but hear about it and learn about it and do that job all my life. And then there was this kind of serendipitous moment where we were having lunch at our desk, and the guy next to me was a sports junkie, and he was just enthralled. Like, he had to know all of the statistics. It wasn't enough to know if the Giants won or lost. He had to know whether, what Barry Bonds' batting average was against left-handed pitchers on Tuesday nights. And this guy was just ready for trivia night any day of the week. And I said, don't you ever get tired of reading about sports? I mean, it's just all you do all the time. And he turned to me and said, well, don't you ever get tired of reading about real estate? And I looked at my screen and I didn't realize it, but I had the planning commission meeting notes. I had Socket Site, which was this local real estate blog. And then I had Zillow open. I was just looking at houses. And I turned to him and I said, well, how is sports ever going to serve you? I mean, this level of knowledge, like your face for radio, what are you going to do with this thing?
That's a fair question.
Trivia night, that's about it. Yeah.
And he said, well, what are you going to, who cares about real estate? What's that going to do? And I figured, well, one day I might buy a house, but this guy's definitely never getting on ESPN. And so ultimately, that was kind of the moment when I knew what my calling was going to be. Around that same time, my now wife and girlfriend was dating a friend of her, or was dating a guy who was in the construction industry. And he was your prototypical contractor. His dad was a builder. He grew up in Vermont. He never went to college. He had just been working basically all his life, all the way through in the field. And so we met at my wife's friend's birthday party, and we start talking. And as we're chatting, he's telling me about what he does for work, and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is exactly what I want to do. I don't know how to build, but I know that I want to do this kind of work. And he was working for a small but high-end builder in Marin, doing, multi-million-dollar projects. He was describing them to me as kind of what kind of projects they were and how high-end they were. And it was just exactly the kind of work that I wanted to do. So we kind of started talking, and I said, listen, I know how to do the spreadsheets. I know how to do PowerPoints. I know how to, do scheduling. I basically negotiate subcontractors for a living, but I just don't know how to physically build the house. But I know how to read drawings, and I can do all this other stuff. And he's like, great, because I don't know the computer, and I certainly don't want to learn. So we decided that we should maybe explore working together. So he toured me through a couple of his projects, and they were exactly what I was looking at on Zillow. Just amazing, high-end, beautiful homes in Marin and San Francisco, and they were exactly the kind of projects that I wanted to be doing. And so in 2007, in November of 2007, he and I bought a home in Noe Valley with a Washington Mutual Ninja loan. And for those who don't remember, a Ninja loan stands for no income, no job application. So this is literally the loan product that bankrupted the economy from a now bankrupt bank. And we, as two 25-year-olds, got a $900,000 loan to go buy this home in Noe Valley together.
With a guy you barely met, right? I mean,
yeah, I'd known him for maybe a year at that point. And so I called my dad and I said, hey, me and this dude I met in a bar just bought this house together. I quit my job. He did too. And we're going to tear this house down, and then we're going to turn it into a 4,000 square foot home. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to sell it for $3.5 million. And my dad's response was, you're an idiot. This will never work. Nothing you've ever done has ever worked. There's no reason to think that this is going to work now. Tell them that you're just a child and you don't know any better. And to which I said, well, it's a great deal. It's going to be amazing. Someone's going to buy it. And just trust me. I know what I'm doing. And he said, the reason that I know that you don't know what you're doing is because I've been in San Francisco since 1979. I've never heard of Noe Valley. If you knew anything, you'd be in Sea Cliff or Pacific Heights or a neighborhood like that. No one's ever going to pay you $3.5 million to live in this house. And I said, well, you just wait and see. And he said, it's a really good deal. You have to understand, it's a really good deal. And he said, if it was such a good deal, why didn't somebody else buy it? And I said, because somebody had to be the first. And so we hung up and we didn't talk for a little bit there. After that, he basically said, you want to be an entrepreneur? this is the life. Don't ask for support. Don't ask for help. And I'm not going to be there for you if you need anything.
He was upset that you left his company?
No, there was no, it was never a question of, I was never going to take that company over. I wasn't qualified and he knew it. My dad is a very pragmatic person. He does what's right, not what anyone else wants. Like he is an exceptionally sincere, pragmatic person. And at that point, the business had grown to become something, why would I, as a 25-year-old, be given something like that, let alone be qualified to do something like that, let alone not have the interest to do something like that. So there was never an expectation that I was going to take that business over. There was never an understanding that I wanted to do that, and I certainly wasn't qualified for it. The other thing is my dad's business was very difficult. It was very cyclical. It was, you were selling the capital equipment for the semiconductor industry. So all of the cycles, you were amplified. Like when there was a 2001 slowdown, his business dropped by, I think it was 70% in a year. Wow. His sales dropped 70% in a year. And so when things go boom, when they're going really well, they went really well. But when things go poorly, the first thing that gets cut is the capital equipment that makes the chips that go into the other computers and whatnot. And so there was never an indication. He was mostly upset because, his son just called him and said he met some dude in a bar and they decided to gamble away their future on some house in some neighborhood he'd never heard of. And so, I for a long time, I was really on this journey to try to prove my self-worth. And I always felt like I needed to make my own way. And I needed to prove that I don't need help from anyone for anything, and that I can do everything on my own. A lot of it because certainly some of the pressure that I had at home in terms of, you got to be the best, you got to have the best grades, you got to be the most successful. And some of it just from watching my dad do that. He literally came here with no help, no family. When my parents arrived, they were probably some of the first Russian Jewish families in the whole of the Bay Area. There was really no support. I mean, even something as basic as getting an apartment was a challenge for them, because in Russia it was assigned to you. And when they went to go and apply, they said, show us your bank statements. And my dad said, who has a bank account? And they're like, well, without a bank account, you can't get an apartment. And so the whole process was something for him. I, on the other hand, was really lucky. I grew up in America. I already spoke English. I grew up not just in America, but in San Francisco, in the Bay Area during, the time of the tech start and boom. And so as much as I spent so much of my 20s trying to prove myself and pretend that I could do this all on my own, I realized more and more as time went on that I can't do that. I can't compare myself to other people. The only thing that I can do is do the best that I can with what I got. I got more than most, not as much as some, and I just got to move forward. And so I think one of the biggest ironies, or one of the biggest, most interesting parts of how I got started is I have this image in my head that when I was born, there was this Simba-like moment in the hospital room where my mom, dad held me up to the sun, the sound of, and they looked at us, they looked at me and probably thought, our firstborn American son will be a lawyer, doctor, president.
Right.
And so they sat and stocked away money into this college fund for me, thinking that I was going to go on to Harvard and Stanford and, become a lawyer and a doctor and all these things, all of the dreams of that they brought with them over from Ukraine. And instead, I went to UC Davis. I was not a particularly good student. In fact, I was a pretty bad student. And I did well enough to get into Davis. And at Davis, I did even worse than I did in high school, and never went on to any kind of master's or graduate degree. But I had enough money left in my college fund that I put that as the down payment to go to partnership with this guy I met in a bar to buy this house in this neighborhood that my dad had never heard of.
I mean, I think the points you're bringing up of not comparing oneself to others is fair and legitimate. I think it's also fair, maybe from your dad's perspective, to be like, what exactly are you doing with this money?
No, and so listen, I'm very lucky that I had this opportunity. I am very lucky that I had this money. I was, from my dad's vantage point, also really fucking stupid in that I took this money that was, for my future, for higher education,
right?
And in his perspective, gambled it away on a home in some neighborhood with some guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, we bought this home with minimal money down, and we spent the next year and a half permitting it. But as soon as we closed in November of 2007, the market turned. Like, we literally bought this thing right at the bottom. And I moved into this house with my partner, and the whole premise of buying it was because it was dilapidated. And so we're living in this very depressing home. It's barely functioning. It has no insulation. It has missing windows. And it was very depressing. And I was solely focused on getting plans and permits and learning more about the construction and real estate industry, and had no income at the time, or very little income at the time, and basically cried myself to sleep in a series of nervous breakdowns for the next year and a half, because all I saw around me was just real estate developers and homes selling for pennies on the dollar, and thinking, oh my God, I just made this stand where I planted my flag and set out on my own journey to prove my self-worth, only to look around and go, wow, the timing could not have been worse.
Yeah.
And so I was really nervous. I spent literally a year and a half just absolutely terrified that this was not going to work out. So after about a year and a half or so, the permits were ready, and it was time to get a construction loan. And at the time, two 25, 26-year-olds looking for a $2.5 million construction loan certainly wasn't something banks were enthusiastic about. But I'm a pretty persistent guy, and I had that experience putting together PowerPoints and spreadsheets, and justifying why I made certain subcontractor selections and from when I was working at my dad's company, and put together a pitch deck and went around to the banks, and the 14th bank eventually said yes, and we got our financing in March of 2009. So literally, was at the bottom of the recession.
Wow.
And at the time, my partner and I got into our first fight. And he basically said, we need to go to Home Depot. We need to build the cheapest house possible, and we just need to get out alive. And I turned to him and I said, we need to build the best house possible because everyone else is doing exactly what you're thinking. And we need to do something that's just incredible, because wherever the market's going to be, our house will sell first, and it will sell for more because it will be the best. And I really love high design. I love amazing architecture. Like, this is what drew me into this. All that time on Zillow, just looking at every house and every listing and studying the materials, the design, the architecture. This gave me a really good sense of possibility. And as I was kind of researching the direction of the home and working with the architect, I heard about the San Francisco Designer Showcase House. And so I went to go tour it, and fell in love with one of the rooms and connected with that designer. Asked him if he would help me design a home in Noe Valley. And he said, sure. So we hired him, and I remember our first meeting. I came into his office, and he was picking up a mood board and putting it away. He had then grabbed another mood board to bring to me, and I looked at the mood board, and I looked back at the other one, and I was like, wait, the other mood board was way nicer. We should do that one. He goes, "Oh no, that's for a client project. You can't afford that."
Hmm.
And I said, "Well, why don't you worry about the design and I'll worry about the cost?" And so the first project we ever built, every plumbing fixture was Dornbrock. The floors were hand scraped walnut floors, done by a company called First, Last, and Always, which is, you know, one of the floor finishing companies in the Bay Area, if not wider out than that. We had a Crestron system. It was all custom cabinets, Sub-Zero Wolf appliances. Every piece of stone and tile in that home was from Walker Zanger, Calicut Oro, and so on. Lutron lighting system. It was pretty incredible. And when we eventually sold the home, the buyer brought through an architect. And it's very rare that you have an architect come through as part of purchasing a home, but you know, I was just happy to find a buyer.
Sure.
And they walked through the house and they go, "Wait, are those Dornbrock faucets?" And I said, "Oh yeah, every one in the house." And he turned to the client and he goes, "If they put in Dornbrock plumbing fixtures, they probably didn't cut any corners anywhere else either." And so the client ended up buying the home. That was in 2010. They paid about $900 a foot, which at the time was a record price for a non-view home in Noe Valley. And we sold the home for about $3.4 million. Wow. So pretty close. We ended up making a little bit of money through the journey. And along the way, I was posting pictures on Facebook. And a friend of mine introduced me to one of his friends who had seen the photos and said, "Hey, I just bought a house in Presidio Heights, and I want it to look exactly like the house you guys just built. Can you do that?" And I said, "Of course we can." So in 2010, we ended up getting our first client. And I mean, obviously didn't know what I didn't know. And, and I will tell you that the project budget ended up finishing many multiples over what I originally thought it was going to cost. But the client was exceptionally thoughtful, patient, you know, definitely some moments of distress. But overall, about a year plus later, we delivered what I think and what he thought was an amazing project. So much so that he ended up telling all of his friends and colleagues about the work that we did. And that's how we started getting into the client and contracting business. Meanwhile, after we sold our first spec project, we ended up, again, you know, there's a saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And as we were looking for our next spec project, we found an opportunity on South Park, which at the time was a burgeoning kind of second Sandhill Road here in San Francisco. And it was a tear-down, dilapidated home that we purchased in 2010 with plans to demolish and turn into 2 condos over a commercial condo. So a mixed-use building. And one of the things I started thinking about early was, in order to grow the contracting business, I wanted to leverage the development business to hire and engage with the best people, the aspirational architects and designers for me that I could introduce our company to and see if we could build trust and maybe get some of those clients to help with the contracting business and its growth. And so the first project, we had I didn't know anything, and we just hired a good, but not a household name architect. In the second project on South Park, we originally had hired a very strong architect, but he was having trouble getting through the planning commission because they really looked at South Park as something that was highly visible with significant kind of neighborhood impact. And so after 4 planning commission meetings where we did not get approval, we ended up hiring a second architect, Cass Calder-Smith, whose claim to fame was, you know, Restaurant Lulu, Barbaco. He did the first Tesla showroom in Santa Monica. He was on the San Francisco Arts Commission, so really well-known architect. And he literally walked into the planning commission with a hand sketch of what he thought the facade should be, and they approved it on the spot.
That's ridiculous. That is power.
And it was a little bit upsetting. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
the design that we built ultimately is very nice, but the other architect did a very good job as well.
Yeah.
All of this is subjective. I'm certainly very proud, and I think the work that Cass did is incredible, but it kind of speaks to some of the politics that go on.
For sure.
In that and continue to go on today. Right. And so that we started doing the development and getting planning approvals for the South Park project while beginning to grow the contracting business. We did this one project for our first client, got into a second project. Slowly that first architect started to refer us a job or two. And it kind of started to grow from there. The original client referred us to some of his coworkers, and some of it's the Bay Area, it's the startups, and some of these clients, you meet them, and within 3, 4, 5, 7 years, they're very, very successful people.
Yeah,
I mean, we once built a 7,500 square foot home for a client that was living in a 1-bedroom, 700 square foot rental. And so they literally went from a 700 square foot apartment to a 7,000 square foot home and didn't stop anywhere in between.
10 times.
So that's kind of the beauty of, 10 times. It's kind of the beauty of living in the Bay Area, and seeing that. And so depending on, which wave you catch, you might be able to catch a really strong wave. So the contracting work started to grow. The clients and the projects we were getting started to become more and more interesting, more and more significant. And then our contracting business really needed to grow with some of the opportunities that we were getting.
Well, so I want to.
This is.
Yeah, go ahead. I just want to kind of pause and loop back, and maybe this you were about to cover just now. So, well, one, I think it's amazing that the first project you did was a development project, a buy and flip kind of situation, and that you bothered to hire an architect, and you bothered to put in, I mean, you made quite an effort to put in very high-end fixtures and materials and things like this, because the typical thing a contractor would do, especially during a time like 2009 or 8 when you're describing, is to go to Home Depot to do it as cheaply as possible, make it be built, build in a way where it's of decent quality, and then sell it, because it's kind of the accepted model for developer projects of almost any scale. I think it's maybe especially residential, is you cut corners because you assume that the buyer won't be able to know the difference, and then you can still sell it for a higher price. But you guys didn't do that.
This was a big struggle with my partner and I, because he was very much like, who gives a shit? A faucet's a faucet. You turn it on and water comes out. And I was very fortunate as my parents' business grew. So did the opportunities that I was given. And, I grew up, I was born in a 900 square foot home in Daly City. And by the time I got to middle school, I was, really fortunate that my parents were able to send me to one of the more elite private schools in the peninsula, and I got to, be friends with and see and be around homes in Atherton, Hillsborough, Woodside, Portola Valley growing up, which gave me this organic exposure to how families entertain, what they look for, what their homes, look like, what the style architecture is. Mm-hmm. And then I had all that time on Zillow studying, what high-end homes are. And then I just have this passion within me. I really love nice things. And it's like anything, everyone has something that they're interested in or are really passionate about. And the more you dive into that thing, the more you're willing to pay for it, or the more you're able to discern what each additional level of value is. And so, for example, you could pick cars. and someone's like, oh man, I really want a old Corvette. And then they get into old Corvettes and they're like, oh, well, I really want that specific model year Corvette. Oh, well, I really want to make sure that it's authentic with numbers matching. Oh, well, I also really want to make sure that it has a pedigree and that the right person raced it and they took it to the right races. And then all of a sudden you go online and you're like, oh, you can buy a Corvette ranging from some number to 10x that number because the provenance matters, because the quality of the restoration matters, or if it was not restored. And so same thing with food, same thing with travel. If that's your thing, the further you dive into that thing, the more you realize you can spend more and more and more on it because you're willing to value each incremental benefit with more money.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
And so for me, I am that way with anything that I do, whether it's wine or alcohol, or I just really love to understand what makes something special, or how special something could be. And so I didn't know much about, plumbing fixtures or any of the stuff, but I knew through meeting this designer at the showcase that I liked what they did. Mm-hmm. And naturally that person worked in very nice and high-end materials. And I asked them to show me the best that they could find me, show me what was the highest quality, to help me understand what makes these materials of higher quality, mm-hmm. What makes a certain brand be able to charge more. And as I got to understand it, it was hard to unlearn those things. It was hard to not want to do the best and work on the best things. And so at the time, my partner who wanted to go to Home Depot and I were arguing, and I said, well, think about it like this. Calacatta Oro is half off right now. The more you buy, the more you save. We're saving thousands of dollars on every slab.
Yeah,
just
it's
do
true.
The whole house with that.
And so I think for a lot of what I do and a lot of what the Forma has become is very much a result of this. Mm-hmm. And so whether it was our branding, our name change, the office that we're building, the people that we have been so fortunate to work with, I really like to understand the nuance of industries, of different subject matters, not necessarily that I'm an expert in them, but know enough to know what makes that industry special, and enough to identify the right people to help drive me, Forma, and the people that I work with to do the best that they can. Mm. And so that's how I got into doing this first spec project to that degree, and setting a record and doing such a good job that people who wanted to build custom homes wanted their homes to look like our spec project. And same thing when it came to doing the next project on South Park. We hired Cass Calder-Smith, who was and is a very good person, very good architect, very well regarded. And one of my mantras, probably one of my biggest MO is I really want to be well respected by those that I respect. Mm. I spent so much of my life feeling like, the grades weren't good enough. I had to do better. I had to be number one. My parents came over, almost like the weight of my family, lineage, the Jewish people, rested on my success, on my shoulders. And so I really just wanted to make everything be special and work with the best people, because growing up, I was not a good student, and I would have like selective moments of brilliance where I'd get an A in history and then I'd get a C in chemistry. And it would drive my parents nuts, because they're like, well, we see that you can get an A. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't like history. I don't like chemistry. And so this was something that I was passionate about enough that I left my job, against my parents' wishes. And, while I certainly had the support of, the upbringing that I was fortunate to have and the money and left over that was earmarked for college. So, very grateful and fortunate to have had those opportunities. I also took those opportunities and applied them to something that, the family that gave them to me did not want me to do.
Right.
And it was a bit of a risk in the sense that my dad is not you tried something, and my dad's not a participation trophy kind of guy. Mm. It's either you did it or you didn't do it. One of the things he always says is nobody hires you to do a bad job. So when you do a good job, all you did is meet expectations. And so that's something that's kind of always stuck with me. So the spec project with Cass, same thing, all Dornbrock, all Calcutta, Lucifer lights. We had amazing pre-finished floors, Fry Wrigley baseboards. We had Gagano appliances, again, custom cabinets with integrated finger pulls, Otis elevator, just everything, Blomberg windows, just everything that we were doing. I wanted it to be just really incredible. I wanted everyone within the industry that I aspired to work with to look at the work that we did and be impressed, and hope that could then drive client work on the contracting side of the business.
I think that's really interesting because most of the times from the architect's side, if you get approached by a developer and you're meant to be the architect for that project, there comes with a number of red flags, because usually that means the fee is going to be astronomically low compared to a custom home. It usually means the timeline's super fast, and it usually means that you're going to have to sacrifice the quality of certain things because it's a developer project. And these are kind of the standards that architects have come to expect when you get approached to do a developer-driven work project. You're like, okay, well, let's get ready for this completely different kind of mindset for this house. And so that's not the case with you. And I think it's also very fascinating that you knew that you would do development work as a way to use architects that you want to work with for other things. I mean, that's pretty smart. Did it work out that way?
I guess time is telling. But in 2014, my partner and I had been fighting for a long time. I was like, we need to get Procore. We need to hire, there's a class of people called superintendents. We probably need a few of them. Maybe we should get a project. Yeah. Maybe we should get a project manager in here. We have more work than the two of us can really do. And some of these projects now have real drawing sets and outline specs, and someone has to actually bid these things. We can't just sit down and throw numbers at a category. I mean, when we started doing the job, doing work, we literally just put a spreadsheet in alphabetical order, appliances, whatever, plumbing fixtures, whatever. And I remember when we got our first project to bid, and they're like, yeah, we need a 16 division CSI cost coded estimate. And I'm like, what is that? So I'm literally on Google trying to understand how to do this. And I'm going through it. I'm like, how do you even know where to put these costs? What cost codes are these things even going to? How does this even work? And so, I never worked anywhere else, and my partner did work somewhere else, but he was really not interested in understanding the actual business. He just wanted to build the houses and make money. And I wanted to start investing and growing. The projects that we were beginning to get were growing in their complexity and size and interest, of course. And we needed to grow to keep up with them. And it kind of came to a head. And basically, he wanted to work the least to make the most. And there's something called the Peter Principle, which is that everybody rises to their level of incompetence. And I just wanted to know if I was already there or if I had room to run. And so he didn't care to find out. He just wanted to, do a spec or two at a time, maybe a job or two for a client, play golf, make some money. He referred to it as the no stress express. And I was sitting there going, well, could we do 3 houses at a time? Could we do 5? Could we be 10 people? Could we be 15? And when it came time to start kind of scaling and building out office space and building out, certain software, he and I we couldn't see eye to eye.
Yeah.
So in 2014, I bought him out, and it was one of the most challenging times in my life because I had lost someone who was a really close friend of mine, someone who I had lived with, someone that I had struggled with, someone that I took a chance on, who took a chance on me. to do something that I didn't know anything about, other than that I just had this raw interest in, and went on my own wondering, can I do this? Can I grow this business? I lost my technical founder, a lot of imposter syndrome of, do I know enough? Can I make this happen? Also losing a sounding board and a friend. And so 2015, we had some work, but not that much, because we had spent most of 2014 fighting. And I was really stressed out at that time. We were building a reasonably large but complicated project for us at the time. And I was nervous that we were going to fail. I was nervous that, we weren't going to get the next job. And, part of this is maybe just that I'm a nervous Jew, and it's just, part of who I am. But I just, again, signed myself up to do big things with no real reason to believe that I could, but some greater part of me that said, but you have to, but you should try. But what if you did? What if you could? What if it was amazing? Yeah. And so at home we have a joke between my wife and I. We're talking about chores and whatnot, and the joke is that Victor rarely applies himself, but when he does, it's awesome. and so this was my thing, where I'm just like, I can't fail. Like I can't. And so we started to go out, look for work, feeling like I had lost, my technical or knowledgeable partner. I ended up elevating one of the guys, the best guy I had in the field, into the office. And we weren't winning any projects. We weren't winning any bids. And so then I went out and hired a project manager, someone who was, a lot of experience, gray haired. And my hope was that together we would present this, very well experienced front that would allow us to start winning some work, because we were really, things were getting really hairy for a while. Most of what happened was we just lost money faster, because I hired somebody without the work there. I hired someone in anticipation of helping me get more work, but not having necessarily the work to pay for them. Yeah. And so most of 2015 and 2016, I didn't make much money. I didn't make any money, actually, lost money, and was growing the team. I got Procore on, and similar thing when Procore, when we were talking to the account rep, and they're like, you're a really small company to take on Procore. And this is 2015. And I said, you worry about the software, I'll worry about my size. Yeah. And so we got Procore, what is now 7 years ago. We were one of the earliest ones in, but I just knew that if we're going to go to where I want to go, we got to do all these things now. And I'm just not someone, I have a hard time knowing that better is out there and not having it or not doing it. Right. And I have this combination of ADHD and FOMO, and together they're really, it's a lot. And eventually, we landed a job with a client, and then we landed a second job, and then another one. And then 2017, we made money. And that was the first time I'd made some money, or some reasonable sum of it. Wow. And then 2018, 19, it all started to grow and grow and grow and grow faster. And so 2020 was obviously a difficult year, and last year was a better year. This year, it feels like I'm doing 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like every other year, every second or third year, I basically take the accumulated income and then I just reinvest it back into the company completely, because I really believe that it's okay for current Victor to stress out, because future Victor is just absolutely going to kill it. So,
well, you do have a little bit of a track record now, so I guess you should have a little more faith in future Victor.
Yes, I do, but the problem is that I keep looking out into how much better it could be, how much better we could do. And so in 2000, I'd always wanted to change the name. Originally, the company name was MT Development. It was my initial, my partner's initial. we needed to pull a permit in 2008, 9. And they're like, what's your company name? And we're like, I don't know. So we made one up, MT Development, and we built a house. I didn't know that 10 years later, we'd be, you know, building client projects with this kind of scale. But I also wanted to do it right. And so even though my partner and I separated in 2014, it was only in 2018, 2019 that I went out, found an incredible company called Born and Bred that does marketing and branding and creative work for companies like Equinox, Related, big brands like this. And we hired them to do a name change for us, a logo, a website update, obviously all new business cards, t-shirts, swag, all of that. And it was a very significant undertaking. It took us, you know, probably a year plus, but that's how we got into the name Forma. And I was super excited for our, you know, beginning of 2020 launch party where we were going to announce the name and throw this big event, but obviously COVID had different ideas.
Yeah.
But that was an indication of kind of the way that I think. You know, I'm willing to wait to do something until I can do it right.
Yeah.
Do you think, or do you see that effort you put into the brand and thinking and designing the brand is actually helping you getting in the places or to the level where you guys want to be at?
Yes, and I'll explain it like this. It goes back to the harder you work, the luckier you get. You know, one of the things that is difficult but important to understand is the flywheel of life, the flywheel of industries, right? And so one of those is there's like a hub and spoke model, and this becomes the flywheel when it's complete. So first, you obviously have to have a natural inclination or talent in something. I think we're all better at the things that we enjoy doing. And so that was kind of my hub. You know, that's the thing that I knew that I wanted to do. Is I wanted to be well respected. I wanted to work with amazing people, amazing clients, building amazing homes of high quality, high integrity. Then I needed to build out the spokes, the right people, the right projects, the right structure, the right organization, the right name, the right branding, the right advertising, meeting the right people, going to the right events, all of that. And so I think that when every touch point becomes meaningful, it helps to build an image that supports what you know in your heart that you can do, that other people will go out and go, oh, like for example, when I meet with a client today, I bring this booklet. It's a really nice, you know, high quality booklet about our company, photos of projects, a description of the process. And it's a marketing material that I hand out to every client when we meet them. And it has some good weight to it. It looks nice. And while we might be interviewing for projects, someone will be like, oh, I saw your advertisement in Lux, or the booklet you gave me was really nice, or I talked to this friend, or I saw your project was published in a magazine or somewhere else. And it all kind of compounds. It begins to do what's called confirmation bias. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're shopping for a new car and you want to buy whatever, a Toyota RAV4, and all of a sudden all you see are RAV4s on the freeway. And it's not that there's more of them, it's that you're looking for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the more that I can create this confirmation bias by ensuring that every touch point, that every interaction feels good, feels solid, that the reputation is strong, that everyone you talk to has good things to say, it's really important. And so today I feel like the brand, the image, the logo, it's consistent with the kind of work, quality, integrity, character that I want to have in the work that we do and the people that we work with. Mm-hmm. And to kind of come back to what you're saying, it's very important. It's very important that everything that you do is the best that it can be, because it all builds on something else. You guys as architects know that better than anyone else. Your work is inspired. It's iterative. It's based off of something else you saw, something else you read or learned about that you then wanted to make your own take on. And so I understood that, listen, I'm in one of the oldest industries out there, so I'm certainly not going to reinvent the construction wheel here. But what I can do is iterate on it and look around what's the best practice, what are other people doing, how can I learn from that, replicate it, tweak it, and make it in the image of what I have, of what I think. And so a lot of the reason that we've been able to grow is in no small part to the quality of the coaching and the consulting that we do. There was a company called Ryan Associates, someone that I had always looked up to, someone that I was always hoping to one day maybe emulate. And I was introduced to the founder, Paul Ryan, a few years back. And one of the first things I did is I said, would you work with me? Would you help me? Would you consult with me? And, all companies have ups and downs. All companies have things that go well and don't go well. And in an area like Silicon Valley, where it's often a founder's second or third time that they start a company that it ends up going well. I was really interested to learn from someone that had those ups and downs, built something of significance, and wanted to see how I could try to take the best parts, update them for the current time, the current technology. Some things made sense. Some things I just, not who I am. I did the same thing with another professional coach. I enrolled myself into a program called Vistage, which is a curated peer CEO network. I then enrolled some of my other leaders into that program. We started a program called FORMA University within the company. So as we started growing, today we're almost 50 people in the company.
Wow.
And so as we started growing, I really wanted to empower and enable the rest of the team to grow with the company as well. And so, it's kind of cringeworthy, but especially from where we came. But today it's, you're carpenter level 1. This is the definition of that position. This is carpenter level 2. And if you want to become that level, here's the skills gap required to be filled in order to achieve that next promotion. If you go to FORMA University page, there's classes, books, quizzes, tests, community college courses that I'm willing to pay for, so that if you want to move up, there's a resource for you to do that. So that's something that we developed over the last year. Wow. We have developed, all the obviously naming and branding. The work that we're doing has become pretty significant, something that I'm really, really proud of. Org charts, roles, responsibility matrices. It's becoming a bit more operational, but my hope is that by establishing some of these ground rules, we can create a more consistent company, more consistent practice. I don't want to be known as a company that, Forma is great if you work with, Steve, but if you work with John, it's not good. Yeah. And so we're creating checklists like, all right, step 1, you mobilize on the job site, make sure that the signage is posted here, make sure that, this is ordered from this person, that, you've done a start work inspection, et cetera. And then throughout the course of the project, we're creating task lists or checklists that need to be signed off for every task, so that as we're going through, we're not missing anything. So as we're scaling and growing the business, we still have an intense dedication to the quality of the work that we do and the consistency of the work that we do, and really pushing through some organization. With that said, I don't want to become this like inhumane corporate, monster. Yeah. It's all about people. It's all about relationships. I often joke that our success is not predicated on building straighter walls or buying cheaper lumber. Our success is predicated on the relationships and obviously on the quality of the work that we do. And so I often look at it as guide rails. And it's like, hey, this is the freeway. You can pick any lane on the freeway, but this is the freeway that you got to be on. And so we are fortunate, and I'm humbled to work with a lot of just amazing top talent within the company. But at the same time, everyone's coming with their own experiences, and we want to leverage it, learn from it, but at the same time, make our own way. Like, I don't want to have an inconsistent company where it's a ragtag collection of really talented people, but individually, every project, every person kind of runs their own way. What I want to do is learn, leverage the diversity of experience, create what we think are our best practices, and make it a formal way of doing things. People have some latitude. Listen, if you want to text me your grout selection, we don't need to do a submittal for that. But I'm certainly not going to order windows without a submittal. And so it just really depends on what we're doing and what the relationship is like, and how working together goes, that we can kind of fine tune the working styles to gel really well. But I know that some of the projects that we're doing today could not be done without that significant investment into that structure and organization. The latest, one of the other things we just rolled out was in 2021, last year, we basically spent a whole year shifting over to Sage for our accounting software. And we ended up hiring someone to be a dedicated finance manager in the company, because as the jobs were growing, QuickBooks was not scaling relative to where we were heading. And I didn't want a Band-Aid solution. I didn't want some interim thing that would take me from QuickBooks to something, and then from something to Sage. I looked around and kind of looked at what are the best software solutions, what are the best accounting solutions out there. And Sage is certainly one of the biggest, most scalable softwares out there. So again, spent a lot of money, went out, hired consultants that would help us with training, switched everything from QuickBooks to Sage. And, here we are a year and a half since, and we're now firing on all cylinders and really able to leverage the software. And so it's part of this thing, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's we'll invest in something, we'll see the benefits of it, we'll make some money, and then I'll turn around and go, okay, well then what's the next thing that could be better?
Yeah.
I look at it. Yeah. It's, if you ever did sports and there was a run, I forgot what the run is called, but basically you'd have, 10 or 15 people running in a line at a jogging speed. And then the person at the back of the line would have to sprint to the front of the line. And then when they would get there, then the next person would have to come in. And so we're all running, but at the same time, someone is sprinting from the back of the line to the front of the line, and you're constantly doing this. And so I feel like running a business is very much like that. You're running, but at the same time as you're running, other things will have to sprint ahead as well. And they never go away. The problems never solve themselves. But if you invest in better solutions and really understand the root causes of most problems, then you can delay that sprint further out into the future. Yeah. And so this has been a big thing for me, is building a meaningful company with good roots that we can really grow for years to come from.
I think that's really smart. And I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges, as you were saying, for a business owner, is especially if you have that itch to never do a Band-Aid solution. I think we kind of have the same mindset as you. It really disturbs me when, not that we allow it to happen, when those kinds of things take place, because you just know it's not meant for the long term. And in a way that you're not investing in your own future because it's a short-term fix. I want to ask, a moment ago, you were saying that, you guys are 50 people. You have a lot of highly skilled people as part of your operation, and you want them to be part of Forma, but you also want to leverage their unique skills, versus having, I think you said, like a ragtag kind of team of a motley crew of different people. Would you say that is the next kind of biggest challenge for you and your company? Because I do feel like it's very common for contractors and GCs to have a group of highly skilled people, but they're hardly a team. They're just kind of individuals that happen to be doing the labor on a project.
Yes. And COVID certainly accelerated some of that understanding or those feelings. So we do 4 paid days off a year for team building events, especially since some of the projects we have are in Carmel or in wine country. People don't see each other a lot. Building that cohesion is really important to me. Making sure that everyone is on mission is really important to me. So one of the other initiatives that we've been doing is every Thursday we have a leadership team meeting. The topic alternates. The first Thursday of the month, it's a tactical meeting. What's going on in every project, what's going on with every person in the company, who's doing well, who's not, do we need more people, what are the issues, problems, what's going well in which job site, et cetera. Then the next Thursday, and it's a strategy meeting, talking about SWOT analysis, talking about infrastructure things, what software we're using, how are we going to propose to improve this, or what reports we should be creating, things that don't have immediate solutions, but have meaningful long-term impacts. And so we created this roadmap, the strategy roadmap. And one of the first things on it was the mission, vision, values. And so within construction and in general, I'm kind of like, our mission is to build houses. But it clearly wasn't enough. And so then I was like, okay, fine, I'll put something together. And as I started putting something together, I realized, wait, this is actually more difficult, more involved. And if I want people to buy into this and really believe it and live it, it has to be something that's sourced within the company. I can't just write something down. And so we spent quite a long time, longer than you would have thought, really talking to a lot of people in the company, really asking, what do you like about working here? What do you think that we do well? Why is Forma different than where you worked before? To put together a mission, vision, values statement that probably will iterate over time, but something that I think we can all get behind. And so today, our mission is the continual development of people and process to create lasting relationships built on integrity, partnership, and craft. Our vision is to be the most well-respected partner for complex and highly detailed residential construction projects. We don't do commercial. We just focus on what I'm passionate about, what we're all passionate about, which is custom residential. Our values are relationships, developing lifelong connections by building trust through integrity, dedication, and communication. And I think that's something that, everyone says, oh yeah, communication is important, but communication isn't just important. It's basically most of why people work with you. When you think about why people don't work with contractors or why they don't want to do a project, they're afraid it's going to cost more, take longer, and they won't be able to get a hold of you. And sometimes the cost and sometimes the time, they go hand in hand. Sometimes it could be code issues. Sometimes it could be the client found or saw something that they want to change. Sometimes the architect came up with a really great idea, but we haven't had a chance to fully detail it out. Sometimes the contractor missed an estimate or was optimistic in what they thought it would take to put something together. But I don't think that contractors are generally bad people. I think that contractors are generally misaligning with their clients and collaborators on expectations. And so the communication part of what we do is the alignment of expectations. It's saying, hey, do you think what's nice is what I think is nice? Do you think that, our expectations are aligning? And having been lucky enough to go to a really good school, living on the peninsula, I've been fortunate to get exposure to how a lot of our clients want to live and how a lot of our clients entertain and what their expectations are. And obviously having parents whose expectations were unachievable certainly helps me there. And so our goal is in many ways the alignment of expectations, more so than, the other contractor is a liar or a thief. It's more that they just don't know what they don't know. A friend of mine asked me, now that you've been at this for a while, is it much easier for you to do this? And I'm, do you just show up and build the house? And I said, we definitely don't do that. And they're all custom homes. But what we do is ask better questions. And those better questions give us better answers earlier on in the process that give us better estimates, better clarity, that help guide the project to meeting the expectations or exceeding them of the clients. So that's a big part of our value. Obviously collaboration, leveraging the diversity of our experience and the understanding of each other to achieve something greater. It's really important to me that we look at what everyone brings to the table. there's a really good saying. It's that you shouldn't make fun of your partner's choices because you're one of them. And so
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm like, look, if you're all here, you're all choosing to work at Forma. So at the minimum, there's something that's bringing us all together, which is that we're all here.
Mm.
So let's leverage whatever everyone brings to the table. Let's leverage what the architect, the designer, the client, whoever else is collaborating, what they bring to the table. Try to understand where they're coming from, because if they're at this table, they did something to get here. Whatever it took for us to get to this table is the same thing that the other person from their position took to get to the same place. So now that we're all in the same place, we should come with mutual respect, come with admiration, and be open-minded and listen and learn and see what we can do together, because the stuff that we're working on is certainly only going to be achieved in a team.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing is obviously craftsmanship. We're passionately dedicated to the artistry, the precision, and the innovation of fine homes. Mm. And so while we are in one of the oldest industries, there is innovation in technology and materials and waterproofing, and being open to that. Not just being open to that, but my estimator, myself, we try to go out to building shows. We have relationships with suppliers that they come out and they give us lunch and learns. It's really important for us to kind of be able to stay competitive, not just in cost, but also in innovation. And a lot of it is also technology and being able to leverage our team with software resources that allow us to stay competitive by doing more with less. The other thing is obviously respect. We have to have mutual esteem that's earned by building this trust and accountability. That's critical. And our last and most important value, I think, is growth. It's just continuous development to create opportunities and advance our curiosity and skill. It's really important to have that mindset to just always do better. This is who I am. Like, just what else can we do? It's that FOMO in me. It's like, I'm missing out. Could we do better? Is there something else I should have done? What else can we do?
Are all of these different ideas and the things that are happening within Forma, do they all come from you?
I mean, I have an amazing team. We have an amazing team. And I always joke that the best idea should rise to the top. But if more often the best idea comes from the bottom, then we have a problem. Mm. Mm. So one of my kind of one of the aspects of my personality is I constantly seek validation. And so I go out to a lot of people and I like to hear a lot of opinions and I want to understand a lot of different perspectives. And so it's really important to me that we do that. At the same time, there's certainly a lot of the initiatives and a lot of the growth in this company is driven by kind of this Peter principle, is driven by this idea of like, can we do better? What could we do? Could we be 10 people? Could we be 20 people?
Yeah.
Could we do 5 houses? Can we build a home for this much money or this complexity? I think a lot of this stems from there's a saying, it's that chips on shoulders put chips in pockets. And I have obviously this desire to do well, to show that, yeah, I did kind of do something unconventional from where I grew up, and it wasn't something that was necessarily supported, but I can show you that I can do something special or something really interesting or amazing with this. And the people we work with on all aspects is a big part of that.
Are you guys still doing development projects, or are you only focusing on the contractor business now?
No, we're very much still doing the development projects. And today, Forma is really cut up into 4 areas of focus. We have a maintenance team. So when we finish a project, we put together a very comprehensive maintenance manual with material schedules. These are your countertops. These are your backsplashes. This is your caulking schedule. This is your appliances. This is your plumbing fixtures. These are the light fixtures in your house. These are the light bulbs that are in your house. That also ties into this master schedule of every 5 to 7 years, you should, restain your shingles. If you have an elevator, you should service it every year. You should, jet the lateral line every year. You should clean your gutters every year, and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a part of my desire to make sure that our clients' homes look as good as they did the day we delivered them, keep them maintained. And a lot of our clients are happy to have this service. This started with us really developing what a good maintenance plan looks like, and really doing just what I think is one of the better closeout manuals that I've seen. And I know this because I've gone out of my way to finagle from other architects and other people as many closeout manuals as I could get my hands on to iterate on, to see, what they included, what they didn't include. And obviously a lot of this is living and learning. And we're building custom homes. So we built this big template out, and in that template is, do you have an elevator or not? Do you have a pool or not? Do you have shingles or stucco? And then what the remaining services. So we have a team that just does maintenance and service. We reach out to our clients. We keep a running list of everything. And it's like, okay, it's time for your, yearly sewer lateral jetting. We then have what's called a special projects team. These are generally toolbox projects. These are projects where they don't necessarily need a full-time site superintendent in the trailer. They're high end. They are maybe cosmetic, or maybe they're a pool house, or maybe they're just for a really good client that needs something done. Our job is to be a full service builder and service all of our clients' building needs. And so the special projects team is focused on high-end spaces, but not necessarily, a multi-year long project with a full team. So that's its own kind of area of focus within the company. And it's actually probably one of the fastest growing parts of our company are the projects between, say, a few $100,000 up to maybe 3 million or 2.5 million, where we're not building you a house, but we're doing a significant update with really nice materials. We just did a project where it was no structural work, but new bathrooms, new kitchen, new floors, new paint, upgraded the HVAC system, updated some wiring and plumbing. But otherwise, the outside of the house stayed. No roofing, no exterior changes, no windows, no structural work, etc. And it was for an amazing client, someone that we really enjoyed working with, and an amazing designer. And so we don't want to say no to what is a good designer, a good location, a good project, but it's not 3 years. It's not some giant thing. We obviously have our full size project division, which is really focused on those multi-year long, large projects. And those can be quite significant. Today, I think at the moment, our least expensive project in that area of focus is about $6 million in construction budget. And then we still do the development. And so the kind of roundabout way, I have 3 development projects going on right now. They're all staggered a little bit. And so even though we have 3 of them, it's really like one at a time in terms of in construction. So we have one underway right now. And Jeff D'Souza, who is an amazing interior designer, is doing the interiors for that project. It's in a great location, and it continues to kind of fortify the mantra of, let's build a home that our clients would hire us and spend 3 years to do. Let's build that on spec in the same area as they would want to live, with the same architects and designers and materials that they would want to see, and build it and hope that someone looks at it in the future and says, wow, this looks nothing like whatever everything else is on the market. This would take me 3 years to build. I know the name of this designer or this architect. I'm willing to pay a premium to have it right now because I know what it would take to do it on my own. So that's one of them. We have another project on spec in the Marina with Steven Sutro's team, which is a really nice marina home. And then I have another project I'm really excited about with EYRC, Stephen Ehrlich's office out of Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
This is a spec project here in San Francisco. And we bought a double lot in Glen Park. And we are subdividing. We just got the permission to subdivide the lot and build two roughly 4,500 square foot homes. And we're really excited to work with the EYRC team. I think the home is just going to be really spectacular. Both homes are going to be really spectacular. And as soon as kind of the next project sells, then I will, go out and do it again, and maybe expand out of the city and maybe do some development projects in the peninsula or maybe in Marin. But continue to use that arm to drive engagement with architects and designers that I might not have yet had a chance to work with.
Are you ever thinking of I don't know, doing like a design build company at some point, or is really like the separate relationship combined on specific project more appealing?
So the developer part of me is like, oh, if you just in-house all this stuff, you could save so much money. But the guy who wants to be well respected by his community goes, yeah, but the best architect, the best designer is not doing design build at some company. They have their own shop, they're doing their own work, and they're being highly sought after for it and that very specific thing. And so I don't have any ideas to do that. I also don't want to compete with my contracting business. I want to leverage that business, and I just don't think that the kind of work that I want to do, the kind of people that I want to work with, it's going to be tough to replicate that in-house. I know that there are companies that do it successfully. Marmol Ratzinger is certainly one that does that. They do design and they do build, and they do it all in-house, and they do a very nice job. But I enjoy the diversity of people we get to work with. I don't want to narrow our potential pool of opportunities. And if we want to do the most interesting work, if we want to be sought after for the most complicated and interesting projects, it's only going to be because we specifically do architecturally or design driven work and not design build.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. I think there's a danger with design build, especially over the long term, for it to be a very closed loop. I think growth can become limited with design build if you're not careful. I have a feeling though, if you had a design build company, you wouldn't have that issue, given all the stories you've told. But yeah, Victor, this was like amazing. I think that what you're doing and your outlook on the construction and the businesses is perhaps unique and certainly special. It's certainly been quite a climb and journey for the last 10 or so years that whenever you started all this. This was phenomenal. I hope that we get to have you on the show again.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be honored. I really appreciated the chance to be with you and share some of my story. I know that I can drone on a little bit, but I appreciate your humoring me.
No, this was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
It was good.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching this video on YouTube. If you like what we're doing, then please support our show by hitting that subscribe button and liking and commenting on our videos.
You can also find us on most of the social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're mostly on Instagram. And you can reach out to the hotline, 213-222-6950. You can send a text message or leave a voicemail if you have any reaction to this recording, any questions you might have, or guest suggestion. Feel free to send it our way.
Cool. Thank you for watching and see you next week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.